Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Joe Yazbeck, Bestselling author of No Fear Speaking. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Are you ready to get started?
I am. Let's go for it. Let's do it.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
They're currently writing their book. If they're in progress of writing their book, the one piece of advice would be, where does this end? What is the call to action of the book? Do you have a follow-up for your readers? In other words, and do you have such a plan laid out at the end of your book in terms of next action steps or further study? Because a book is basically a generating force that drives people to the next step. You're enlightening or educating people through the material of your book, building your credibility, and you want them to follow you. You're a literary leader, and you want them to follow you. And so you must have in place, in fact, even on the onset of starting to write your chapters or table of contents or sequencing your chapters, you want to know where this should end up, because that would make it even more of a focus where your book is aligned to where you want the reader to end up. That is the call to action.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, finding reputable people.
Absolutely.
What I mean by reputable, you've got to have ethical, honest, responsible people who want to roll their sleeves up and not just promise you things that other people are doing. You could have a literary strategist who's not producing a thing, basically giving you advice on what you should do, and that's not okay. And so I like specialists. You know, I have a few publishers that I recommend for my clients. Every one of my clients who become leaders and public speakers are urged to become best-selling authors, and we help them through that process. And I've managed to go through a battle-tested team of people that are specialists in both design, interior design, front cover, back cover, editing, developmental editing, or line editing, either way, and also legal proofing the book as well. So, and getting it onto platforms such as Amazon and making sure that it can thrive on different platforms. So there are specialists. You're not going to find someone who says, and if you have somebody that says I could do it all, I would be very suspect.
And please share a marketing strategy that you've used in your book launch that worked well.
A marketing strategy, huh? Well, let me tell you one thing. First of all, know why you're writing the book, number one, and that will dictate how you should market the book. I wrote my book not to get book sales. Now, that might sound odd. I got thousands of sales when I first released it, and it went to number one in 4 categories within a very short period of time. But I showed up with my book. And to me, your marketing strategy should be a reflection of your ability to communicate and speak in public about your book. In public meaning live, on camera, through webinars, through podcasts like this, radio shows. What I tell my clients to do, for example, is show up. Your book will not show up unless you show up. You're the author. You are the reflection of the book's credibility, and you've got to be able to know what story you're going to tell that really promotes the book and highlights the book and gives the book its legitimacy. And I know for a fact that when I train my clients to do so, and they become authors as a result, the marketing strategies are not just book signings. It's not just, show up at a bookstore and sign. The idea here is, do you want a curriculum that will support the book? Is this a nonfiction book? I've had fiction books as well where curriculums are in place. For example, a course on how to handle an addictive family member. And a book might be about a family member's addiction and how to handle it. And some of it might be fiction that tells the story. It might be, a memoir, for example. But there's always something to merchandise afterwards that the book itself lends tremendous credibility to. You see, so people will buy the book when they're buying other things. And I always say get as many formats of your book. Now, I have my book in 8 languages. I have ebooks. I have print books. I only have the English book. I only have the English book in audio. There's no other language. But I have it on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. So the idea here is many different formats. And I also designed an online video course based on my book, and it's me unscripted, talking in front of a camera, and a lot of chapters of the book in video with some nice special effects, and that could be purchased at nofearspeaking.com. But you've got, in other words, the marketing strategies is you have lots of different avenues to promote. You have lots of different avenues going out to lots of different ways people like to read or listen or watch. That's also a key factor.
How did you get your book into 8 different languages?
Well, that's something I actually teach people, and if they really want to become international, I found a way I had audiences in many different languages, all in one audience, and I got tabbed to do a business convention on a cruise ship, and we had people from many different cultures in a 5-6 day period where I was a key featured instructor on public speaking for a business convention. And I had I had 7 different languages that I had 7 different translators going all at once. That led to people coming up to me saying, can we have you come to our country? Can we have you deliver seminars? I said, absolutely, I would love to. If you, and I always had somebody in charge of something out of that group, and they were in some way an organizer. And in fact, I had one gentleman from Hungary, and this was the very first translation, where they not only translated the book, they published the book, they printed it, and they made it available to a few thousand people in Hungary. And my very first week, I had 6 workshops, which they set up for me, and my first event was 700 people. And I had to sign every single book. That was carpal tunnel. And that was a 12-hour day where I gave a 3.5-hour presentation, and the rest of it was book signing. And so you never want to turn down, I got to tell you, Paul, the main thing that I'm telling your audience right now is learn public speaking skills. Now, I'm not saying that because I happen to be a public speaking trainer and coach and written a book about it, but if you can speak in public and speak on camera and get on to radio and television and learn how to do that, which is what we do. We train others to do this, and I'm not just pitching what I do. It's essential to get your book marketed and get it sold. You see, and let the translators do the rest if it's international. I have done webinars with a translator. I was in Mexico City releasing my book in Spanish, and I had a 1-hour seminar I was delivering from Mexico City to Prague, Czech Republic. And I had a translator right there at their convention translating from English into Czech, you see, while I was sitting in Mexico City. You sort of get used to this kind of world, you see, but it's very exciting. And one thing, if you're an American writer and you've managed to put together a publicity package, people in different countries like Russia, and I've trained people in Russia, Ukraine, South Africa, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Germany, Spain, all of these places, they love American speakers who are authors. They idolize them. And I'm not into a fame game. I don't care about that. My intent is to help people. But they are truly, truly appreciative and grateful to have you come to their country and provide them this kind of training.
Well, these translators, so you met them doing different events, and then they offered to actually translate the books into those languages for you?
Of course, because
Nice.
first of all, that would not have happened if they weren't blown away. You see, you have to be a great speaker. I had the Andrei Karpov, for example, is the largest, most successful speaker promoter in Russia, and he came to hear me speak because that's what he does. He was invited to come for 10 or 15 minutes to get a taste of it, and he stayed the entire day. And he comes up to me afterwards. He says, "I've never seen anybody do what you do." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You change people. You bring them out of the audience, and within 15 minutes, they lose their stage fright. It's like a magic act." He goes, "And everybody was raising their hands, and they want to come up, and they want that." And he says, "That's what I want on my speaker tour." So he offered me a 6-week tour in Russia, which I declined. 6 weeks is an awful long time in one country at the expense of others. But I did put a TED Talk together for him, and they showed the TED Talk at every single event. So, it's important that you have, first of all, really great translators, because they need to understand your work, and they need to understand some of the American slang, and to stop you if they don't understand the word, so that they're not saying something that is creating confusion to the audience. But I had some fantastic translators, and I instruct them. I hold a meeting. I actually hold a seminar with my translators beforehand to make sure they understand what I'm needing and wanting, to make sure that the communication is exact as it needs to be.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Wow. Let me just tell you, my very favorite book growing up, which is still one of my favorite books of all time. And this is a book that, as a senior in high school, changed my life, actually. And it brought out the humanitarian in me. It's a book written by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And it was a very descriptive account of his experiences as a child through the Holocaust. And it was a tremendous motivational, inspirational book, which I recommend often. I also recommend Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I think that book itself is using the use of aesthetic poetry to get messages across, and using that to create emotional impact. And by the way, I happen to have Lebanese ancestry on both sides, mom and dad, and so he happens to be the poet laureate of Lebanon. And I used to hand that book out to my friends in college, and they would come back to me and very, very thankful how a book like that helped change them. And that's the key to a book. The key to a book is, did it make positive change? Did it make a significant difference? Did it uplift? Did it inspire? Did it change the way you thought of things for the better? So those are 2 books right there.
Well, Joe, for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Oh, my goodness. You have to go. Let me tell you, in my book, I've got a lot of quotes at the end, because I give examples of how speakers can use quotes to inspire their audience, particularly at the end. But I'm not going to be able to give you this quote, but I'm going to tell the audience right now to go to YouTube, okay, and take a look at Charlie Chaplin's famous speech from The Great Dictator, okay? And that entire speech, to me, is one of the greatest examples of public speaking I've ever seen. And it's part of a movie. And it happens to be about a 2-minute, 3-minute, extremely impact rendition. It's a satire on prejudice and bigotry. And that was Charlie Chaplin's, and he sort of does a satire on Hitler. And he does a complete opposite, looking like Hitler, but talking about what is wrong with this planet and the world we live in. The Great Dictator. And I just urge clients, or anyone, or your listeners, to go to YouTube and just click on or enter Charlie Chaplin's speech from The Great Dictator, and you're going to see the most incredibly impactful presentation you've ever seen and heard.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Online, I have two websites. My leadership business website is prestigeleader.com, and for all my materials and online video courses in the No Fear Speaking system, go to nofearspeaking.com. Both sites, Paul, have something free on them. There's 30 No Fear Speaking tips that they can download for free on both sites. I also offer a complimentary consultation with anybody reaching in from the website, whether it be over the phone, over Skype, or anyone local to the Tampa Bay area in person. So that's prestigeleader.com and nofearspeaking.com.
Well, Joe, thanks again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.